Imagine a world where marriage was not a private promise of love, but a social contract designed to bind men into obligations and women into guarantees of security. The medieval age offers us a chilling window into this reality. Here, law and custom work together not to elevate romance, but to institutionalize an ancient instinct, female hypergamy, the drive to marry up, to secure resources, to find protection in the strongest male possible. The Morgengabe, a marriage custom where a husband was required to give his wife a valuable gift after the wedding night, was not an innocent gesture of affection. It was a legal bribe, a payment to ensure her loyalty, and in truth, it revealed the transactional nature of union between the sexes. Arthur Schopenhauer, the philosopher who never shied away from exposing the cruel mechanics of human nature, would have seen in the Morgengabe nothing less than a betrayal, not just of men, but of the very idea of marriage as a bond of equals. For Schopenhauer, love was never what people pretended it to be. It was a mask for the will to life, a strategy of nature to manipulate men into servitude for reproduction. The Morgengabe law simply stripped away the illusion and revealed what was always there: marriage as an economic bargain where women held the upper hand. In this video, we will unravel the Morgengabe betrayal, not as a quaint relic of medieval Europe, but as a key to understanding how female hypergamy has been institutionalized through law and custom for centuries. Guided by Schopenhauer's brutal realism, we will trace how love is transformed into obligation, how desire becomes debt, and how what looks like romance is often just the most ancient transaction in disguise. Part 1. The historical Morgengabe, marriage as transaction. To understand the betrayal at the heart of the Morgengabe custom, we must first see it not as an isolated tradition, but as part of a larger system of medieval marriage law. In many parts of Europe, especially in Germanic lands, a man was required by law to present a gift to his bride after consummation of the marriage. This was not a token of affection or a sentimental keepsake. It was often land, livestock, jewelry, or even political power, a tangible transfer of wealth that made clear who owed what to whom. The origins of the Morgengabe are rooted in the recognition that women entered marriage with a bargaining chip, their chastity and their fertility. Society framed these qualities as invaluable, something men had to purchase through payment. It was thought that by consummating the marriage, the woman had given her most precious possession, her virginity, and thus deserved compensation. In other words, the law itself treated marriage as a sexual transaction with a price tag. Schopenhauer would not have been surprised by this. He argued that human courtship is never about love in the elevated, poetic sense, but about the continuation of the species. For him, women instinctively seek security and resources, while men are lured into surrendering their freedom by an overwhelming sexual drive. The Morgengabe legalized this instinct. It transformed a natural exchange into a binding social rule. The woman received wealth, the man received access, and society stamped the arrangement with legitimacy. But here lies the betrayal. While men often imagined they were entering marriage for love, the law reminded them that what they had really done was enter a contract of debt. The morning after the wedding night, the man's passion had cooled, but the legal obligation remained. He was now financially bound to the woman he desired, and through her to her family and lineage. The Morgengabe revealed that the real purpose of marriage was not romance but redistribution of resources, ensuring women and their offspring were always provided for at the expense of the male. Part 2. Female hypergamy and the Morgengabe betrayal. The concept of hypergamy, a woman's instinct to marry up, was not invented by modern dating culture. It is as old as civilization itself. But what makes the medieval Morgengabe so revealing is that hypergamy was not just a private instinct. It was institutionalized, written into law, and given the force of society's approval. Women were encouraged, even expected, to demand more from men than mere affection. They were to extract wealth, land, and security as proof of the man's worthiness. The Morgengabe turned the hypergamous instinct into a legal strategy. For the woman, it was not enough that a man desired her. desire is fleeting. The law demanded that desire be anchored in obligation. By forcing the man to part with his wealth, society ensured that the woman's choice to give herself was rewarded materially. Thus, hypergamy became not just natural but righteous, backed by the authority of custom and church. Schopenhauer would have seen this as the triumph of nature's cunning over male reason. Men, blinded by lust and the illusion of romantic love, would kneel before women, showering them with gifts and pledges, not realizing that their instincts had trapped them. Nature does not care about the happiness of the individual man. It cares only about the survival of the species. By ensuring women were tied to men of resources, the system secured the future of children, but in doing so, it condemned men to become providers first and lovers second. This is the essence of the Morgengabe betrayal. It was not betrayal in the sense of broken vows, but in the deeper sense that men were tricked into believing marriage was about companionship, while in reality it was about obligation. Hypergamy, once an instinct, became law. The medieval man could no longer escape it. He could not walk away after satisfying his desire. He was bound by custom to pay the price. And once the price was paid, he was reminded forever that his role in the union was not romantic hero but economic servant. Schopenhauer's voice echoes here with disturbing clarity. He wrote that men are like cattle led by the nose, driven by passion into a stable they cannot leave. The Morgengabe was that stable. It institutionalized hypergamy in a way that stripped men of their illusions, yet they submitted willingly because their instincts left them powerless. Part 3. Love as Nature's Trap. Schopenhauer on the illusion of romance. If you read Schopenhauer carefully, you find his most shocking claim, love, which poets and priests call sacred, is nothing but a trick of nature. For him, every sigh, every sacrifice, every reckless act in the name of passion is not driven by free will, but by the hidden agenda of the species. Nature whispers into the heart of the man that he is, choosing a woman because she completes his soul. But in truth, he is being manipulated to secure reproduction, to pass on traits, to bind himself to obligations he would never accept if he were clear-eyed. Nowhere is this clearer than in the medieval institution of the Morgengabe. The man believed his love had led him to his bride. He believed the wedding night was proof of their union. But in the morning, when law required him to pay the price, the truth of Schopenhauer's insight emerged. Passion was only the bait, obligation the hook. The momentary ecstasy was a biological trick, and the payment demanded after consummation revealed the actual structure of the relationship. Love, Schopenhauer argued, is the most powerful illusion because it convinces men to work against their own freedom. He compared it to a kind of madness, a temporary insanity that compels sacrifice. The Morgengabe codified this madness into law. It transformed a fleeting feeling into a permanent contract. It said, "Your desire has spoken. Now you must pay." And this is where the betrayal becomes most painful. The man thought he had chosen the woman freely, out of his own affection. But in reality, he had been chosen by nature and then bound by society. What he saw as a union of souls was in fact the execution of a program. Hypergamy disguised as love, obligation disguised as devotion. Schopenhauer teaches us that men who chase romance without seeing its underlying purpose are like moths drawn to flame. They burn brightly and then they fall. The Morgengabe law ensured that the fall was not just emotional, but financial, political, and lifelong. Part 4. The Economics of Desire, How Men Paid for Passion. It is tempting to think of medieval marriage as a private affair, but in reality, it was a transaction with far-reaching economic consequences. Land, titles, livestock, jewelry, political alliances. These were not side effects of marriage. They were the very essence of it. When a man gave his bride the Morgengabe, he was not only rewarding her for intimacy but also transferring wealth to her lineage, binding himself to her family, and often losing autonomy over his resources. Hypergamy thrives wherever resources are scarce and security is fragile. In the medieval world, where survival often depended on wealth, land, and alliances, the woman's instinct to marry upward was not only personal but communal. Families encouraged their daughters to demand the most advantageous match, and the Morgengabe gave legal structure to this instinct. It turned personal desire into social strategy. Schopenhauer would have viewed this coldly. To him, The individual man is merely a pawn sacrificed for the species' continuation. His wealth, his labor, his freedom, all are tools repurposed by nature to secure offspring. Society merely added another layer, converting instinct into law, so that even after the man's passion subsided, he remained trapped by obligations he could not escape. Think of the irony. The man sought pleasure in the wedding bed, but what he gained was debt. The night of passion became a morning of reckoning, and that reckoning did not end with one gift. It extended into years, sometimes decades of servitude. What began as lust concluded as labor, with the man carrying not only his wife but also her children, her family, her social standing. The Morgengabe was simply the first payment in a lifelong mortgage. This is why Schopenhauer referred to marriage as the trap into which men fall, blinded by desire. He saw that what looked like love was in fact an economic exchange, one where the woman's value was set by her desirability and the man's by his ability to provide. Romance was merely the surface. Beneath it lay the hard logic of transaction. Part 5. The Morgengabe as betrayal of male freedom. We call it betrayal because the man entered the marriage under one illusion but lived it under another reality. He thought he was gaining a partner, but he had acquired a creditor. He thought his passion had united him with a woman, but in truth, it had indebted him to her and to her lineage. The Morgengabe was not a symbol of love, but a certificate of bondage. Schopenhauer's philosophy makes this betrayal even more poignant. He insisted that men, by nature, are driven by the will that blind, irrational force that uses them as instruments. When a man falls in love, he is not expressing his freedom but surrendering it. And when the Morgengabe demanded his wealth, it was the visible proof that his freedom had been exchanged for obligation. The medieval man might have felt this betrayal on the morning after. He woke beside his bride, his passion satisfied. But the law compelled him to act as though the night had created a permanent bond. He could not simply walk away. He could not say, "The desire is gone, therefore so is the contract." The law chained him, and society watched to ensure compliance. Here lies the parallel to modern men, a parallel Schopenhauer would not hesitate to point out. Today's divorce courts, alimony payments, and child support systems are nothing more than the modern echo of the Morgengabe. Schopenhauer would say that men who ignore this truth live in illusion. They believe they are free when they are most bound. They believe they are choosing when they are being chosen by forces larger than themselves, instinct, society, law. The Morgengabe, then, is not just a medieval curiosity but a mirror. It shows men across time the same hard lesson. Love is nature's mask. Hypergamy is law's enforcer. And freedom is the price men pay for the brief madness of desire. Part 6. Marriage as the servitude of the male. Schopenhauer was merciless in his judgment of marriage. He called it an arrangement that sacrifices the happiness of the individual man for the survival of the species. If you strip away the illusions, you see what he saw. Marriage does not elevate men. It binds them. It reduces their freedom, redirects their labor, and reshapes their identity from individual to provider. The Morgengabe was the first symbol of this servitude. The moment the man placed gold, land, or livestock into his wife's hands, he admitted that his passion had made him a debtor. He confessed that what he desired most had already been consumed, but the price would follow him for a lifetime. In Schopenhauer's eyes, this was not romance but slavery dressed in ceremonial robes. Consider how the medieval system worked. The husband was now tied to the woman not only emotionally but materially. His wealth was no longer his alone. It was dispersed into her security, her children, her lineage. Society reinforced this servitude by praising him as honorable for fulfilling his obligations, while punishing any refusal as dishonor, shame, or even legal violation. The man was praised for being chained and despised if he sought escape. Schopenhauer argued that men deceive themselves when they believe marriage is for their happiness. The truth, he insisted, is that it benefits women and children. While men are drained of vitality, wealth, and freedom, the Morgengabe revealed this openly. It was the contract that shouted what romance whispered. You are no longer your own. You exist for others. Part 7. The eternal return of the Morgengabe from medieval law to modern courts. It is easy to look back at medieval Europe and laugh at the strangeness of the Morgengabe. We might imagine we have progressed, that modern love is freer, purer, less bound by contracts of wealth. But Schopenhauer would shake his head. He would say, "You are still living under the Morgengabe, only in different form. Look at the modern legal system. Alimony, child support, marital property division. All of these are nothing but the continuation of the same principle. The man's desire creates a bond, and once the bond is consummated, society demands payment. Just as the medieval groom awoke the next morning to surrender land or gold, the modern man wakes after divorce to surrender income, property, and years of labor. The betrayal is not gone. It has been modernized. Hypergamy too has not vanished. It has only adapted. Women still seek men of higher status, greater resources, broader protection. In fact, with modern legal structures on their side, hypergamy has become more powerful. The medieval woman relied on the Morgengabe to secure her position. The modern woman relies on courts, settlements, and social sympathy. In both cases, the man's role remains the same, to provide beyond the limits of his desire. Schopenhauer warned us that nature's designs do not change, only their costumes do. What was once done through ceremony is now done through bureaucracy. What was once demanded by custom is now enforced by law. The betrayal of male freedom, the institutionalization of hypergamy, and the transformation of love into obligation remain the constants beneath shifting appearances. Schopenhauer's final warning. And so we arrive at the heart of the matter. The Morgengabe was not just a medieval curiosity. It was a mirror that reflects a timeless truth about the relationship between the sexes. Love for men is rarely free. It comes with conditions, with costs, with obligations that extend long after passion has faded. What the medieval man saw the morning after his wedding night, modern men see in courtrooms, in financial settlements, in the chains of obligation that bind them to women long after affection has died. Schopenhauer's brutal wisdom is that men must stop deceiving themselves. The world dresses up female hypergamy as romance, law as love, obligation as honor. But beneath the surface, the mechanism remains the same. Men pay, women secure. The Morgengabe was simply the clearest expression of this truth. A transaction disguised as devotion, a betrayal disguised as ceremony. To ignore this lesson is to live as a fool. To face it is painful, but it is also the beginning of freedom. For Schopenhauer, freedom does not come from indulging passion, but from mastering it, from seeing through nature's tricks and society's masks. Only then can a man refuse the role of debtor, refuse to kneel before illusions, refuse to confuse chains for crowns. The Morgengabe has long vanished from our ceremonies, but its spirit still haunts us. Every man who believes love will save him without cost is already standing at the bedside of history, ready to pay a price he does not yet understand.
Schopenhauer's voice reaches across time to warn us. Love is nature's snare.
Hypergamy is society's weapon, and freedom belongs only to the man who dares to see the betrayal for what it truly is.